got around to doing the transition pictures for Jerry Garcia. He died at the age of 53 in 1995, I think, of a heart attack. And he was the lead singer and guitarist of the Grateful Dead. Now, I have to admit, I knew nothing about Jerry Garcia or the Grateful Dead at all. I can't hum you a tune. I assume they were incredibly successful because he was a meteoric figure in music. I mean, I think he's like one of the top 20 guitarists of all time, according to Rolling Stone. And so in many people's lives, this guy figures very, very highly. In mine, not at all. I couldn't tell you anything about him. But several people wanted his transition pictures, and I had to look him up to find out why that might be. Turns out he had a lot of health problems. He was a diabetic and actually went into a diabetic coma at one point and stayed there for several days. And he had smoking issues, addiction issues. He was a heroin and cocaine addict. He was just obese, addicted, and very, very unhealthy, and died actually in rehab. A tragic end to what was, I assume, an incredibly successful career. So I went into the energy for Jerry Garcia, and the pictures were very different to what I normally see. Because when I found him, he was flying through the air. You could say high as a kite, but actually he was. And he had momentum. There was something about his energy that really flew along. So much so that he had to be grounded. And ahead, there were all these hoops that he had to fly through. And these hoops operated, as far as I could tell, as a brake to stop him, to slow him down. As he entered this tube, and on the other side of the tube, he landed and he had crossed over. That was it. And he found himself in a tunnel unlike any I've seen before because it was covered in ash. And at some point he kneeled down and picked up a handful of ash and stared at it and immediately felt moved. Sad, even. It's like, wow, that's it. That was all there was. We came, we did something, and we left. That's all there was. It was a moment of great epiphany to him and sadness. His time was over. And he let the ash drizzle through his fingers and walked off. Up a hill. He didn't quite know where he was going, but he went up this hill, down the other side, and found a lake. And he looked at the lake, and it's almost like instinctively he knew he wasn't going to go in there because that was a bad thing. He would go along the path around the side and avoid that completely. That would bring him face to face with things he didn't want to admit. And he went down around the path, but the path was tilting. It was actually impossible to walk along. And as soon as he tried, he slid right off into the lake. And as he did so, he was overwhelmed with emotion. He cried and cried and cried. All this stuff came out of him. I've always believed that people who take drugs are running away from something within themselves. Reality is simply too harsh. And so they take drugs and it puts a mask over it. It blurs it. And that's what this felt like because now there were no drugs. There was no alcohol. There was nothing he could turn to. He had to face his own self. And for some reason, that distressed him greatly. He cried and cried and cried until he could sob no more, till it was all out. And he felt better, as you tend to. He got up, he walks along, and then it turns out that the path and the pool were actually right by this metaphorical dome I always see. But for some reason, He felt that he was going to be treated harshly for wasting his health, for not learning his lesson, for something he'd done. I don't know. I don't know anything about the guy. It was almost like he was going, please have mercy on me. Please forgive me. I know I could have done more. I know I could have saved myself and not wasted my health. But please forgive me for that. Show mercy. Grace is all about mercy. We live in a benevolent universe. There is no judgment. There is simply balance and imbalance, harmony and disharmony. He had in his lifetime thrown his being into disharmony and dis-ease. Now, maybe that was part of his learning process while he was alive. But in these transition pictures, it seemed like he only learned the lesson after he'd passed, which is very strange. But eventually, he plucks up the courage and he goes over to the light and he starts washing his hands in it, which was very odd to watch. It was almost like he was seeking absolution, cleansing. Please forgive me. Show mercy. And then, convinced he had done all he could, but still filled with trepidation, he climbed into the light and was gone. Now, I can't judge him. I know nothing about his life. But I do know that many people, when they get to these transitions, have exactly the same thought. That's it. It's over. Oh, if only I had had another 20 years, I could have expressed that, let that out, treated these people better, reined my excesses in. I could have done all that if only I'd known that this was when I was going to go, in my 50s, in my 60s. But you don't know. Maybe he was meant to live longer and just blew it. But there was that tragic moment that I've seen so many times when people go what they think is the wrong time or too soon, which is often the phrase, and only realize once it's over that they could have done more, should have done more, needed to do more. I don't think we can afford to take that chance. It's like, live now. Own it now. Claim your sovereignty now. Be your whole self now. Because tomorrow, anything could happen. And that's what I learned from Jerry Garcia. But I did those pictures a long while ago. I sat in a cafe and did them. And I walked home thinking about these pictures as they apply to my own life. Actually, took an unconventional route that I'd not taken before. And I passed a shop window that sells old clothes. And when I looked in the window, there was a dummy there, a mannequin, wearing a Grateful Dead t-shirt. I have never seen a Grateful Dead t-shirt in my life. Until that day. That was really, really strange.